When CBC News asked the question, if the AI bubble pops, will the U.S. economy collapse with it? I paused for a moment, not because that question isn't important. It is very important, but because I could feel that millions of people are looking at this story from only one direction, the direction of collapse. And today, as I stand here, in front of more than 1 million people listening, I want to take you to a different angle, a wider angle, a deeper angle, and a truly necessary one. Because maybe the danger isn't that the AI bubble explodes. The danger is that it doesn't. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But stay with me for a moment. When people talk about bubbles, they imagine a moment of bursting, a straight vertical drop, a shock on the market that drags everything down. That's why the question from CBC News sounds so haunting. But we forget one thing. Many bubbles do not burst early. In fact, they expand for a very long time before they break. Look back at the dot-com bubble. It didn't burst in 1995. It didn't burst in 1997. It kept running for almost an entire decade before collapsing in 2000. During that time, millions of people said, "Oh my God, this thing is going to crash any minute now." But it kept rising, kept expanding, kept pushing asset prices higher because of money, because of technology, because of fear of falling behind, and because of the race among those who refuse to be left out. Today, we are seeing that exact pattern repeat. The U.S. is trying to find a new engine of growth, and AI has become the perfect lifesaver, improving productivity, cutting labor costs, increasing profit margins, automating everything, and creating a life or death race among businesses. No one wants to be the one who falls behind. No one dares to say, "We don't need AI yet." And that is precisely the fuel. That keeps the bubble going longer than people think. But here is the point I want to make to you. If the AI bubble doesn't burst, new risks begin to appear, and they are quieter, more dangerous, and far more long-term. Let me paint the picture. The first risk, power concentrated into a group that is far too small. We are living in an era where just a handful of companies, literally counted on one hand, are building the entire AI world. Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, Apple. If AI continues to expand without correction, these companies won't just lead the tech sector, they will become nations of their own, with resources, strength, and influence that surpass many actual economies. When every system, education, healthcare, government, business, depends almost entirely on their infrastructure, the question is no longer, will the bubble burst? The real question becomes, how much power are we placing into how few hands? Next, let's talk about energy, the crucial element people usually overlook. AI does not run on virtual machines. AI runs on real electricity, massive electricity. Data centers consume so much power that many experts warn that if AI expansion continues at this pace, the electrical grids of many countries will not be able to keep up. And when energy costs rise, everything else rises with it. Imagine an economy stretched thin because the cost of operating AI exceeds the benefits AI brings. That is not a distant scenario. That is a scenario coming very, very close. And then there is another risk. A risk I believe many people feel but haven't named. AI creates wealth for those who own capital, but AI takes away opportunities from those who rely on labor. If the bubble continues to expand while automation spreads, the wealth gap will widen faster than at any point in modern history. So the bubble doesn't need to burst to cause a crisis. It only needs to keep expanding, and the entire system will be forced to adjust around it. And this is when we have to face the real question. What happens if the U.S. economy becomes overly dependent on AI? We are already seeing it. Try removing the top 6 companies from the S&P 500. The market almost stops growing. What does that mean? It means we are standing on a bridge whose main concrete pillar is AI. And when an economy depends on one giant pillar, it doesn't need a bubble explosion to create chaos, just to slow down, and everything around it begins to shake. Financial markets, national productivity, industrial policy, supply chains. Everything becomes tied to one engine, and overdependence has never been a good sign. So, how do we know when AI is reaching that too much point? We can watch a few signals. When profit margins of AI companies start flattening, that is a warning. When countless businesses put the label AI-powered, but their revenues don't change, that is a warning. And most dangerous, when energy costs rise faster than the productivity gains AI brings, that is the signal the bubble has grown beyond control. These are the historical moments people usually miss until it is too late. But I'm not standing here to spread fear. I am here to ask a more important question. CBC News asked, if the AI bubble pops, will the U.S. economy collapse? But the question I want to ask the more than 1 million of you listening right now is, what happens if the AI bubble does not pop, but swells to a point where everything must depend on it? What happens if the risk isn't collapse, but dependence? Because sometimes the danger is not a loud explosion. The danger is something so big, so strong, so essential, that the entire system cannot live without it. And when that happens, even if it doesn't burst, it can still distort, bend, and destabilize everything around it. So now I want to hear from you, the more than 1 million people watching. Will AI explode like a bubble, or will it become a massive balloon that wraps around the entire economy? And if either scenario happens, what should we do now? Because talking is easy, but action is what decides who survives. So we, the investors, the observers, the people who move ahead of the money, what should we prepare? Let me share this clearly, practically, and without any sugarcoating. First, do not put all your assets into a single story. Whether you believe AI will continue expanding or you believe it will burst, putting everything into one trend is always a mistake. We are entering an era where volatility will only grow. Intelligent allocation across tech, energy, metals, cash, and commodities will keep you alive in both scenarios. Second, watch energy, because energy is the real choke point of AI. If you want to know how AI is progressing, don't just look at tech stocks. Look at electricity prices, grid capacity, data center investments, semiconductor operating costs. Many investors think they are tracking AI, but in reality, they are not tracking the foundation of AI. Third, stick with companies that generate real profits, not just a good story. In every bubble, there are companies that survive, not because they tell good stories, but because they create real cash flow. If AI continues booming, they will lead. If AI cools down, they will still exist. Investing in those companies is always the smart choice. Fourth, keep part of your assets in a defensive state. Cash or cash-like assets such as gold, silver, or the Japanese yen is your buffer to act when the market shakes. The greatest opportunities always appear when people lose confidence. Don't let yourself stand still when that moment comes. Finally, don't follow the crowd. Move one step ahead of them. There will always be noise. 1 million people will say AI is the future. Another million will say AI is a bubble. But the reward always belongs to the one who asks the right questions and dares to move first, while the rest are still arguing. And now, the question I want to send to all of you, those watching, thinking, and investing. If AI is the future, how are you preparing to meet it? If AI is a bubble, how are you protecting your assets? And if AI becomes the thing the entire economy depends on, where will you stand? Leave your thoughts below. I want to read them. And we will continue expanding the conversation that CBC News started, but in a deeper, clearer, and much more level-headed way.